Hello, all you paranormal and UFO people out there. This is your paranormal guy here. Sorry about that brain fart earlier. I couldn't remember the name of that book. The book is called Missing 411. It is written by a very intelligent man, I might add, and he's very meticulous and very thorough about all the information that he gathers. From the information that he gets from these mysterious disappearances in national parks. So like I said, once again, it is called Missing 411. One of them is called The Devil's in the Details. You can find it at canam.com. I haven't got the book yet. I intend to get it because all the things that I've read about in the books is ridiculous. Very scary stuff. But anyway, I've really been getting into all this information about the mysterious disappearances in our national parks. I'm talking about places like Yosemite National Park. You got Yellowstone. You got a place called Crater Lake, and one is called a place called Wild Duck Lake in Vancouver. Well, on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, aka Canada. Now, to start off, I want to talk to you about all these mysterious disappearances of little children. And the children that disappear range from 2 to 14. But I'd say about 90% of the children that disappear are below the ages of 10. At least between 2 and 5. Now, these are children who either have mental problems and can't explain what's going on, or they're too young to talk, or they just can't comprehend just yet of what they actually saw. There are some children that can tell you everything that happened to them, but it is so out there that people with a high intellect or just normal grown-ups can't seem to fathom that it actually happened, because they know kids have an active imagination, and stuff like that. And their imagination run wild. What they could have seen probably was something else. Like one child said that she was in a car. Now, the fact that there was no other way for her to disappear, and the fact that there was no tire tracks in the area where she disappeared at, that car could mean a lot of things. It could mean a UFO, for all we know. And it probably, to her, it looked like a car because it was moving. But anyway, to start off, I want to talk to you about a story about this young boy who was berry picking. Now, that's another thing that happens with a lot of kids. They berry pick, which is very common, but yet a lot of kids who end up berry picking end up disappearing. A story about a young boy named Yahuti Prior. Okay? He was berry picking with his father. 2 years old, mind you. And that's another thing. A lot of 2-year-olds are being taken, or they just vanished. This kid, he could barely walk. He's still young and can walk, but he, how out 2-year-olds, they fall if they start running or whatever. So he's berry picking with his father. Like I said earlier, this happened in a place called Wild Duck Lake, and this was, like I said before, in Vancouver Island, British Columbia. His father's berry picking, and all of a sudden he actually begins to notice that his son isn't where he should be. He just vanished in the thin air. It's just beyond his thinking of why he disappeared. Okay, so he starts yelling out his son's name. He's running around the camp, the area where they were berry picking, and couldn't find him. People started to come around when they heard him screaming. They started to help him look. The park police came and the rangers came. They had dogs out and they were searching for him. Never found him. I'd say about... Oh, by the way, this happened around September 23rd in 74, a year before I was born. I was born in 75. So I'd say about maybe 6 days later, they found there's some people that was walking around this real heavily wooded area. Just trees and branches and all kinds of stuff everywhere. 6 days later, they find his body. Now, other information, I haven't got that yet, but that's all I really know for right now, I can look it up and then I'll get back to you later on with some more details on his disappearance. I just know that they found him dead. Nobody knew how he got there because he was miles away from where he disappeared at. Miles away. I mean, it was just too far even for him to walk, especially in a heavily wooded area like that. You know, it's just too much. So nothing was ever thought. Nothing ever came of that investigation about how he disappeared. Another story. Gonna jump ahead a little bit. This one is about a young boy who recently disappeared this past summer in July. His name is Dior Kunz. That's Dior Kunz. Kunz. I'm pretty sure you've heard about this story. It was big news, and it was big news on TV for a couple of days at the most, maybe even a week. He was brought to his grandparents' place up in the mountains somewhere in Ohio, as a matter of fact. Idaho. I'm sorry, Idaho. They dropped him off at their grandparents' house. They went into town, to have some fun or whatever. The grandparents was watching. They was on this little trail, just enjoying the sights. Something must have caught the little boy's grandfather's eye, but he knew he was watching his son, so he just looked, saw something, and he looked back, and he just vanished into thin air just that fast. Now, most people who would think about that would say, okay, he was kidnapped, obviously, or abducted, or grabbed. Now, let's think about this for a second. Let's really think about this. If a little boy that size is going to be grabbed, what happens? You take your arm, you wrap it around his front like this, you cover his mouth, and you hold it tight to the point where he can't say anything. You can close his mouth with your thumb, or he's going to be like, and then he's gone. Now, think about it. His father was not that far away from him. His grandfather was not that far away from him. He was just like maybe a couple of feet away. And he just vanishes. He just disappeared. Okay? He's going to hear something. He's going to hear somebody walk up, or he's going to hear him struggle and scream and all that stuff, and then you will see him probably be carried off. It wasn't an animal. To their knowledge, it wasn't an animal. He didn't fall in a lake. He didn't drown. He's just gone. He vanished in the thin air. He just disappeared into oblivion. Okay? Now, like I said, there's going to be some evidence. He's going to be screaming. He's going to be... You're going to hear that muffled scream of his. He didn't hear it. He just turned his head for a second and looked back, and he just vanished. Now, as far as the National Park Services go, I have gathered information about how they do when it comes to you trying to find out information about these disappearances. It's a law called the Freedom of Information Act, which states that as long as the information that you want does not interfere with an ongoing investigation or a suspect that may be looked at for the crime, you can retrieve that information. The National Park Service does not abide by that law or that rule, whatever you want to call it. Okay, they will find whatever reason they can to get away from that. I've heard of that happening a lot to people, especially one particular person. His name is David Pilates. He's the one in charge of all of these investigations when it comes to these national park disappearances. Okay, now the thing about that, they know something. They either know what or who this is that's doing this, or they don't know and they're so scared because whatever this is that's doing this, it is obviously so maniacal, so scary, so ominous that they're scared to the point where they don't even want to touch it. They don't want to know anything about it. They don't want to let nobody know about it, because if they did and people find out, guess what? No more visits to these national parks. No more. They don't want that, so they don't want to tell anybody. They don't want to give up the information because they know if they give it to somebody, it's gonna get put out there in the news, and they're gonna be like, oh, so that's the reason why. Well, I'm not going. A couple of people are already said that they're not gonna go into the woods or in the parks anymore because they're too scared. They don't want their kids to disappear. Right up under them. You could be in a group, and if you fall behind, that person is gonna disappear. If you go ahead of someone, you're gonna disappear. Because if you're out of someone's sight, even for a second, you just vanish. There was a story about a woman who was hiking. Not hiking. She was gonna go on a picnic, and she asked this little Native Indian kid if he wanted to come home on this picnic, because she was gonna go out there for a while and come back later. He says no. So she went to this place where they could fix her lunch. She goes out there. She never comes back. They look for her. She's just gone. She vanished. Her car was still where it was supposed to be. Her belongings was there, but she wasn't. They never found her. She just vanished in the thin air. Okay? Now, the way I see it, they have people who vanish in the thin air. And some of them are found, but they're found dead. My thing is, if there is no evidence as to how they were killed or how they died, the only thing that comes to my mind is their life force is being sucked out of their body. Therefore, never leaving any evidence stating that they were killed. It's just that their life force is plucked out of their body, they're drained, and then they just fall dead. Okay? And another crazy thing, there's one story about a little boy, somewhere between 2 and 8. He was at his grandparents' place, their farm. He vanishes from their sight. He's found 12 miles, 19 hours later. 2 or 3 mountain ranges, a couple of fields, and a fence. Half alive. He was barely breathing. He was barely awake. He didn't have any clothes on except for his underwear and no shoes. In the snow. What kid can travel that far without, shoes, or at some point take his clothes off? It's unheard of. I can understand why. I don't know. But it's very weird. There's another story about a little girl. Her name is Katie Flynn. She disappeared too. Her father owned a logging company way back in like the 1800s, and she used to ride on the horse, the little cart that the horses would drag, and they had the logs on it. She would ride on it and come back. But one time she didn't come back. Somewhere between when she left and when the horse came back, she wasn't there. Nobody ever found her. So people that disappear and they're found miles and miles later with no trace of any reason why they were dead, it's beyond me. I just can't figure it out. So I would suggest you go to his website and get his books. That will give you more details on what's going on. I'm just a messenger. I am so into these things, trying to figure out what's really going on. I can't figure it out either. So I implore you to read the books. It's called Missing 411. I only got so much time left, so I'm going to leave you with my usual exit. Aloha, mahalo, and a hui ho, which means till we meet again. Peace.